Welcome to Design is Marketing, a podcast for product teams and marketers who want to learn what works and what doesn't when it comes to engaging and converting users. This podcast is brought to you by Sparker, the design agency. If you want to know more about it, check sparker.co. Welcome everybody to Design is Marketing. My guest today is Greg Landon. Greg has a past of head of digital and is now the head of marketing for Leadoo, a martech platform that has recently raised Series A. He's the best person to talk about the interaction of product and marketing, and with him we're going to discuss the important role of rating for the growth of your users base. Stay tuned till the end to get his checklist on how to get your company ready to raise Series A. A big welcome to Greg. Greg, nice to have you here. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good to be with you, Federico. And very nice to be on a podcast with an Italian connection. I think I mentioned before my partner's from Veneto, so I'm sure there'll be lots of hand gestures in this one.
Yeah, you told me your partner is Italian as well. And for the ones who don't know, yeah, I'm Italian. You probably have guessed it from a bit of accent. Well, Greg, would you like to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I also have an accent that people might pick up on. So I grew up mostly in South Africa, but I've lived in the UK for many, many years now. I actually come from a marketing agency background. So I am the head of marketing at Leadoo now, but that's a relatively new role for me. My background is in all kinds of marketing agencies, everything from PR agencies all the way through to quite technical digital ones. But now I'm the head of marketing for Leadoo, and we help you convert the traffic, the passive traffic that's on your website, into leads and conversions.
Yeah. So what was also very interesting the first time we talked was really the fact that you changed from like an agency background to more an in-house background. Would you like to tell us a bit more of how this has changed your perspective with regard to marketing?
Of course. So in agencies, you have a long list of clients. You have to be very prescriptive, very disciplined with your time. Clients are ultimately paying for your time and your expertise. So you have to divide up, how you can work with different clients and projects by, potentially up to the hour in some cases. And so that's great in terms of the experience it gives you because you work with, great brands doing all kinds of different things. And you often have to find a way to make things work with limited time and resources sometimes. So it's incredible for, experience and development and learning the craft. But I think what I'm finding in-house now is that the freedom to be able to spend as long as I need to on certain projects to get things off the ground, to devote as much time as I feel is appropriate to things, that is freeing and fun and challenging in a different way. So obviously, very, very different worlds. But I would say the one thing that's been, I guess, good for me to help with that transition is coming to what you can think of as a big startup or a scale up. And so, even in that world, things still happen at 1,000,000 miles an hour. There's still 1,000,000 projects that need sorting. Yeah. So in a way, I don't feel like I've completely left that agency dynamic behind.
No, I can understand. I guess probably to some extent, the agency experience gave you a bit of a structured approach that you now can use as a template or as a, say, fallback plan for everything that you do. And Startup Life now gave you more ownership. Like for me, it was actually a bit of an opposite experience, reverse. So I first started in the startup world, and that was for around 5 years. And then I switched to my own agency. But I do indeed recognize, say, the two sides of the coin, both very interesting.
And I would say, I do say to kind of younger marketers starting out, I think you should do both. Like, yeah. It's great if you can find an in-house gig that you're happy with and you've got a good company to work for. That's perfect. But even so, I think, particularly when you're young and you're learning the craft, I think that it is good to do, even if it's just for a year or two, agency experience, because you get exposed to so many different brands, you get exposed to so many different kinds of problems that you don't in an in-house context. And I think doing both just makes you much more well-rounded because, the flip side is people who've only ever worked in agencies, for instance, they are great at, diagnosing problems and giving advice and consulting, but they might not be great at, implementing and doing actual marketing initiatives from start to finish. And so I think to do both makes you better as a marketer, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And also I think opens a bit to the kind of, lateral thinking that you might have when you see that, for example, a tactic that has worked in a specific industry with a specific client might be applied to something that you're doing in an industry where no one has ever tried it before. And so I think it can really open the door to a lot of like cross contamination, which is very interesting and very effective also.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would recommend anyone who's only done one side but has always thought about doing the other, maybe just take the plunge, because it's certainly it's an experience whichever way you flip from one to the other.
Yeah, it makes you very complete. So, well, let's come to what this experience, the agency experience, has taught to you in terms of marketing, and what are the things that you're now applying to your experience?
So I think the biggest thing that agency experience gives you is when you get a new project or a new brief to start working on. Obviously, you have to audit the project, you have to overview it, you have to look at it strategically and say, where can we make the biggest difference here? And that ability to audit and diagnose, what is a quick win and what is maybe a nice to have but a longer term priority. I think that's really important for in-house marketers to have. So I think the biggest thing that agency experience taught me was how to look at a problem quickly, how to solve the easiest problems quickly, get some results and build from there. Whereas I think a lot of in-house marketers, they maybe are coming into a situation where things have been done a certain way for a long time, and they are instinctually, they want to not rock the boat too much. They maybe want to keep doing things within the parameters that are already there, but without that kind of quick diagnosis and that ability to audit what works well, what doesn't work well as a process. If you don't have that, I think you can sometimes miss quick wins that you should be doing.
Yeah, got it. I think this kind of brings me to the role of ratings, right? Which is something that I would really like to discuss with you today. Obviously, ratings are very important in the service industry. We all know that, and are also very important when it comes to product, especially the role of like credibility, social proof, which is something that if people come on your website, they can see literally everywhere. So, would you like to tell us a bit more about that? Like how important it is for you? Why have you decided to design your website and your digital presence this way?
Sure. So ratings and social proof in general were one of those quick wins that when I started at Leadoo a year ago now, with my agency hat on, I said, we need to be doing more of this. Leadoo is a relatively young business. We're about 5 years old. There are, like most startups, there are bigger players who do similar things in our space. And so when I came in, I saw that we didn't have a massive presence on review sites like Capterra or G2. And so my initial instinct was, we know we have a good product here. We know we have happy customers, but a marketer, which is who we sell to normally, looking at us for the first time wouldn't know that. And so that immediately puts us on a back foot. Also, reviews and the assets that you can get from reviews, you can generally get for free. And actually with kind of not a whole lot of effort a lot of the time. All you have to do is generally go out and ask customers and ask people who are familiar with your product to take a few minutes to leave a review. You don't have to run ads. You don't have to put a lot of resource into that. You can have existing teams within the business who are already talking to customers, go out and get those for you. And so that was a quick win that I said, look, we need this to be able to show people that we do have happy customers and that people are using our software to solve actual problems. Because, for instance, in the case of Leadoo, if we're talking to a marketer who's never heard of us, yes, we can go out to them and say, we solve problem X, Y, and Z, and we can help you do all these amazing things. But if we have an existing customer saying that, they're far more likely to believe that person. On
Got
your
it.
point about how we use it on our website, this is the other thing that I love about, for instance, like G2 reviews. The fact that you get badges that talk about if you're a high performer within your certain niche, that you're easy to do business with, or that people get value from you. Those visual assets, in this case badges, those are so easy to use on site, and they just give such trust to anyone browsing the site for the first time. It's not just your sales messages on your website. It's proof, it's visual proof that people actually use you and they actually like you.
Yeah. So the advice that you would give to any SaaS or platform that doesn't have this kind of badges on their website is definitely to put them on top of their on top of every page of the website.
I think so. They take up, from a website design point of view, if we want to go there, they take up such a small amount of space. They are visual. They break up the flow of text and messaging on a page. They are a real trust signal for users. So some of the research suggests that any website or any product with reviews of less than 4 stars out of 5, 50% of people will immediately they will not buy that product. Instinctually they will not want to buy that product, even if they have been sold it, or even if they think that it does solve a problem for them. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
the
Very
ability
interesting.
to the ability to just very quickly say, look, here is a badge that shows you I'm highly rated, I'm a legit player in my area. And to be honest, we try and take it even further. We actively try and link to the G2 reviews and turn them into graphics and testimonials. We use them in case studies because we want people to see at every opportunity other marketers like you use our product.
Yeah, well, cool. So, would you say that it's more important to have something there, even for example, if you have, let's say, 4.2 as a rating, would you then prefer to have 4.2 on your website, still showing that a lot of people showed appreciation, or nothing at all?
That's a good question. I think I would probably still have it. What I would maybe do is be a little bit more selective in terms of pulling out individual, 5 star or 4.5 star reviews, taking the text of what people said they really like, and maybe having that in graphics or call outs within the website. But yeah, even if your rating isn't perfect, as long as it's good, as long as it's above average, and as long as you can point to multiple people using it, I think that is more important than what the actual decimal score out of 5 is.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I think a lot of people probably think that anything below 5 is like a nightmare. And I have to say that unfortunately, especially in very competitive spaces, right? Because, for example, when someone goes not on your website but on G2 or Capterra, um, well, unfortunately, there is a lot of competition. So everything below, say, 5 or 4.9 seems to be a disaster. But actually, well, the simple fact that someone showed, say, appreciation for what you're doing might be very, very powerful. And actually, people do read this kind of reviews. Yeah.
and if you're a startup, if you're a young company, for instance, Leadoo, take as an example, we are never going to appear number one in Google for best chatbot software. We're not in a position to be able to do that. Almost nobody is. But the website, the search term that does show for that is G2. If someone searches what is the best chatbot software, G2 will come up in position 1. And so if we are high up on G2 because we have good reviews, people will see Leadoo even though they didn't see the Leadoo website appear when they searched for best chatbot provider.
Yeah.
And there's, to your point as well about people don't trust certain scores, there's some really interesting research about like how we as humans look at reviews. So actually, if somebody has a perfect 5 star rating, if you have like hundreds of reviews and it's all only 5 star ratings, people actually don't fully trust that because they think it's fake. They think you've paid for
It's
perfect
too good to
reviews.
be true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the sweet spot you want to be in, which kind of thankfully we are, is about 4.7, 4.8 out of 5. That's amazing.
Okay.
But crucially, you what people actually trust just as much is the number of reviews you have. So if you have 10 reviews, a small amount, and you're 4.8 out of 5, people won't trust that as much as if you have 50 reviews, but you're 4.6.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Very interesting. So I think indeed we're also getting as users, as consumers, even more refined in the way that we interpret the data. So for us, it's not just the stars anymore, but also how many people rated that company, that solution. Oh, very interesting.
And I think to go back to your topic that you want to talk about Series A and funding and social proofing, this also speaks to if you are looking to raise funding, this is one of the best things that you can do to prove to people you have a product market fit. because what any investor is going to want to know is, does your product satisfy a need that a segment of the market have? Why would you invest in a product that doesn't have that? And, startups are great at saying, we solve this problem for these people. We're the best. We're the first, we're the only company doing this. But one of the only ways that you can actually prove that product market fit is people using a product. And the most obvious or the cheapest or the easiest way that you could show that is if you have 50 people who are actually in that market segment saying, yes, I used this product. And even if I didn't give it a perfect 5 stars out of 5, I still liked it. And so that
Yeah.
when I talk about, the number of reviews you are building an indirect picture for either customers or investors or anyone that you have a product market fit.
Correct. Yeah. Well, we'll get to the Series A in a second because I think that's a very interesting and juicy part. Let's say, but I'm curious to know. So, let's say for a marketer that has done nothing when it comes to reviews, what would you suggest to do as, say, first steps?
So for me, when I came into Leadoo, we have a customer success team. We have account managers and people who deal with customers all day. So my first obvious thing that I did was go to them and said, let's start asking for these a lot more regularly, and let's get a process in place for collecting them at different stages of the client journey, or asking for them at different stages of the client journey.
Do you
You
have an
also
example? Yeah. Do you have an example of like when you were asking? Is it better to ask in person or via email?
So totally fine to ask via email. You generally get a lot higher success if you're asking, on a video call or in an in-person meeting. Um, the a lot of customer success people don't like asking early on in the process. They want the client to have been in place for 6 months or a year or 2 years and be really happy before they ask them for, they think they're asking for a favor a lot of the time with reviews. But we've tried to move that process up. So even after the client has been onboarded, within the first few months of us working together, as long as we've had a good setup, everything's gone well, the relationship's clicking, we've tried to move that up. We don't think you need to wait 6 months or a year before you ask for that kind of review or case study. We think if the clients are having a good experience and they can see you're working hard for them, they're generally more than happy to just leave you a quick review.
Okay, yeah, got it. And because there is also some research showing how people are more likely to give you a very good review after a rewarding action, right? So, for example, you see it a lot in app design that after you have done something which is like earning points or reward or something that has saved you time, then someone asks you for a review to that. Have you also done, say, some study in the psychology of when is the best time to give reviews, time apart?
Yeah, so this goes to the point about asking for them early in the customer journey as well. We do find that people are more inclined to give a review actually early on, paradoxically,
Mhm.
because what we find is once they've had a good setup, they've had a good initial experience with us, that's almost when we are most front of mind for them. They're thinking about us, every day or every week. They are they've hopefully had a good experience to that point. Whereas if you wait for a year, they may still really like you. They may still be getting great results from your platform or your software, but you may not be as front of mind for them. When you're onboarding a piece of software, you thinking about it constantly. Whereas even if you've had something for a year and it works brilliantly, you probably don't think about it as positively every day just because it's become part of the furniture that you already have.
Yeah. And I would probably add to that in the beginning, when say there is still the love is still fresh, it's also fresh the memory of the pain that you're solving for them. So for me, the fact of having found something that solves a problem that no one could solve for me before, yeah, is definitely a source of like enthusiasm. So I'm much more willing to give a review versus after 1 year when, well, I kind of got used to the fact that you guys do the job, right? So yeah, I think I would then say, well, to rephrase what you just said, that it's probably better to ask for a review in the very early stage of a relationship with the client when, say, the enthusiasm for how you solve their problem is still fresh. So they're also more likely to give you a very good review.
Absolutely. And what I found, I come at this from a marketing point of view. The review is great, but the review is just one thing that I would ultimately love to get from customers. So what we've found works well is if we get the review quite early on in the process, and then maybe later on, 6 months or a year into the relationship, that's when I would generally get in touch with clients from a marketing point of view to say, okay, now that we have a year's worth of results, and you left a great review for us at the start, could we build up more of a formal case study? Could we record some videos with you about your experience? Could we turn your actual results to date into more of a marketing material or a success story? But it is crucial to have that review in place early on, because that, again, is a signal from the customer that, yes, I was willing to say publicly, I endorse your product. It's
Very
very,
interesting.
if you don't have that, it's much harder to 6 months later come in and say, okay, great. Can we have a full case study now?
Yeah, so the review is really the stepping stone of a deeper relationship that can come with time. So when you want to build, for example, a case study, and most likely you also have some data to prove the advantage of the solution that you've provided.
Absolutely. And
Wow.
it's, as marketers, we really should be talking to customers all the time anyway. It shouldn't just be the job of customer success or account managers to do that. Marketers should be talking to customers throughout the process. So whenever I do that, I'm always asking, for reviews and things as well. But what I do find is that without those touch points of having, even if it's just in a small way, asked you about how your experience is going, or if you can leave a positive thought about your experience, without that in place, it is much harder to come in later and say, okay, we've got great results for you now. Let's talk about it.
Got it. I guess what a lot of people have, that's really also the last question that I will ask you on that, then we can move on. But from a startup perspective, I guess that some of us or some startups have a bit of resistance towards asking for reviews because we kind of doubt the fact that our product is still not perfect. And then we think like, yeah, what if, more like mainstream clients who expect a certain level of experience and probably don't understand that we just launched give us a bad review. So, what would you say is the best strategy when it comes to that? Is it still a good idea to ask for a review to everybody?
So this is a tip that actually comes from my agency days when I was dealing with agency customers. I used to ask for reviews regularly, partly because my agency wanted them, but
Okay.
more so because it was a way for me to test the way the relationship was going. Because it's very easy for a customer to say to you, yeah, we're happy, things are fine, and not tell you about some of the problems or some of the pain points in the background. People, unfortunately, don't always want to tell other people exactly how they feel. They might be, particularly if they've only just started working with you, they might be afraid of confrontation. They might not want to explain to you everything that they're thinking in the back of their mind, or if there's any budget pressure internally or anything like that. And so if you just ask somebody, how do you think this is going? You may well get an answer of, yeah, fine, great. And then 6 months later, they might churn because of something that you weren't aware of that was going on in their mind. And so when I was in my agency, I would often ask, could you just leave us a Google review or a Trustpilot review? And that was my way, because I was dealing as an account manager with customers. That was my way of almost gauging, how do you really feel about this? Because if you're unwilling to take 2 minutes to write a review, that potentially, not all the time, but potentially might indicate you don't think this is going as well as you tell me you think it is. There might be an underlying problem there, because if someone is unhappy, they are unlikely to publicly say, yes, I endorse this company. And even if people do write reviews that aren't 5 out of 5, firstly, I think it's good to have as many reviews as you can get anyway. But that might also be the point. If somebody gives you a 3-star review, that might be your moment to go back to them and say, okay, thanks for doing this. I didn't realize that there were some of these issues that you talked about here. Like, what can we do to address that? Or if they say, I'm not willing to give you a review at all, that might be your moment to go, are we actually solving the problem we said we would for this customer?
Got it. Yeah, I think it's a very good point of view. Indeed, like we always change point of view when we now suddenly feel that what we're saying is said to a wider audience and not just on a one-on-one relationship. So yeah, I think probably people are even more authentic when it comes to expressing a opinion in public, like a review. Yeah, interesting. Well, I would like to move on now to like your experience with Series A, because obviously asking for reviews is one of the things that you do as head of marketing. There's probably thousands other. So I would like to ask you, how do you see? Have you seen that your activities as marketer has changed now that your company has grown and you guys made it to this moment of your journey?
Yeah, so full disclosure, Leadoo's Series A did come before I was in place with Leadoo, so that happened just before I joined. In terms of how we use that investment, really it's about scale. It's about getting onto new channels and promoting our message across new channels that we didn't have the ability to before we had Series A, for instance. So that running a lot more ads online, setting up partnerships or affiliate networks, generally with a paid element a lot of the time, being able to do new things and reach new channels that we couldn't before. I think on the kind of social proof point that we've been talking about, I think if you're pre-Series A and if you're actively looking for investment, I think reviews are great. I've been talking about it for 20 minutes now, but I think as much as you want to be able to show a product market fit and actual good experiences from customers, I think the key point I would focus on from a marketing point of view is traction. So there's a great book, if anyone has read it, called Traction from Gabriel Weinberg, who was the CEO of DuckDuckGo. And this idea of traction, the way he talks about it is you want to be able to show that you have traction either with a certain market segment or from a certain acquisition channel. And what he means by traction is this idea that almost like a snowball effect, that you have done something either through a specific channel or you've talked to a specific market audience. And like a snowball, you have been able to accumulate gains and momentum to the point where that has become an essential channel or audience for you.
Got
So
it.
a lot of people, for a lot of startups, that might be as simple as the founder's LinkedIn profile. It might be that a lot of new business and a lot of brand awareness and momentum comes because the founder is very well known. For a lot of people, that might be, they might have a very good content operation. They might be very good at SEO, or they might have amazing paid ads that have, really high engagement. There's a million different ways you could go with it. For Leadoo, actually, one of our channels that we have the most traction on is actually physical events. Even though we're a tech company, going to physical events, going to marketing or sales events, and actually having people walking around with tablets and laptops demoing the product. Because we know, even though we don't have the highest brand awareness in the world, once people see the product, that's generally when they're interested, because it's it solves a lot of different problems and it's a very easy product to demo and show off.
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying. So, if I hear correctly, basically what you're saying is that whereas at the beginning, product market fit is important, what you expect also as an investor later on is the fact that the startup has found at least one channel that they have proven that they can scale, so that basically when there's the injection of money, it's not about keeping testing, but it's about pouring something into a channel that already works so that you can multiply the effect. And for you
Exactly.
guys, live events really worked well. Like, would you like to maybe tell us more about that? Are there special events that you would recommend to SaaS startup also in the marketing tech sphere?
Yeah, so there's a million. So, you could go to massive ones like Web Summit or SaaSiest or Crunch. There's loads of huge, specifically startup focused events, which are great. To me, I would explore events within your customers' industries. So we sell to marketers primarily. Our ICP job title would be like a head of marketing or a CMO. So for us, we need to go to marketing conferences. So we go to big expos in London every year, like Technology for Marketing or the B2B Marketing Expo, Digital World Forum in Amsterdam and Dubai and lots of places. So I would find events, say that was your channel, I would find events specifically within your customers' world. And you could even take that further. So, we have certain industries that we sell to quite a lot. One of them, for an example, is automotive for us. So we go to something called Automotive Management Live every year, not because we know anything about cars, but just because we know that we have a lot of good automotive clients.
Good.
And we try and bring customers within the industry to those events so they can be on the stand with us and talking to people about, yep, Leadoo really helped me. And I own a car dealership, for instance. So it's about, and for us, we've been able to turn that into a channel where we go to a lot of events. But the reason we do is because we know that we've had a return from the events we've been to. So, of course, you can test and optimize it over time. Like maybe next year we don't go to these events, but we go to these ones. But the point is, you need to find a channel that you have traction in that creates that kind of snowball effect. And, for us, events have been great, but it could be anything. It could be email. It could be personal brand that you've built up on LinkedIn. It could be paid search ads. It could be anything.
But there has to be, let's say, at least one channel that you have proven that it works.
Yes, because if I was an investor, obviously the first question I'm going to ask you is, if I give you all this money, what are you going to do with it? And if the answer is, well, we'll test it across 10 different channels that we haven't before, I don't like the sound of that as much as, no, we know what we're doing in this specific channel works. Let's say it's events, and we would take your money and we would do 5 times the amount of events, and we would expect this ROI from that based on what we've done already.
Got it. And to prove that it works, would you say it's sufficient to show that the channel has a positive ROI for your company, or are investors looking for something more?
So I'm quite a data-driven guy, so I would always start from ROI and what I could prove in terms of business that we've won from the channel in the past. But you can also make the argument, for us at events, for instance, it's very easy for us to make the argument. We are getting in front of people and demoing our product to a segment of people that we would never have the opportunity to do that to without events. They might never have heard of us. They might never find us online. But if we're at an event stand in front of them with a laptop, they can see Leadoo, which is something that we couldn't do without the events. So you could make the same argument for PPC ads in certain countries. You could make the same argument for SEO content. But whatever your channel is, I would start with ROI. But there's also a lot of less tangible benefits long term that you can also point to.
Got it. So to show that, not only you have something that you have proved that works, but also to have a clear idea of certain things that probably haven't been able to test. Because, for example, also before you talk about influencers marketing, right? So certain things that only make sense to try the moment that you have a large enough budget, because you don't test it with a few $100, right? And so it's also important to show that. Are there other things that you would say are important when you're preparing yourself for Series A, or you are in that space with your company in terms of marketing?
So I would say, the 2 keys for me would be product market fit. And again, to what we were saying earlier, the easiest way to prove that is with happy customers and generally reviews or case studies from happy customers. Then traction in at least one channel that you can scale. And as a kind of spin-off point from that, I would say that it's very important to be able to show what you would do with extra investment. So it's all, asking for investment is easy. Projecting what will happen with that investment is hard. And so that's when you have to be able to refer back to pre-investment, we did this and it yielded X. And you can make projections from that, but without that aspect of saying, we know this works for us, or we know we have traction in this area because of this number here, if you don't have that, if you don't have a CRM system set up to be able to measure that, if you don't have marketing reports and dashboards that prove the source of different deals that have come in, it's almost impossible to convince investors that doing 10 times more of that on the specific channel will give them a return.
Got it. Well, this is great. It feels like this episode is a gold mine of information, at least to me. I think it's very valuable what you're sharing. Greg, I want to ask you one more thing before we wrap it up. How can listeners find you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. So Greg Landon, spelled like London, but with an A at the start. And they can also check out leadoo.com, where they can go on and see what we do, obviously, as a company. But you can also play around with Leadoo's tech, because we feature it heavily on our own website, as you would expect.
That's amazing. So LinkedIn or the website of Leadoo would be the best channels to get in touch with you or see what you do on a daily basis. Well, Greg, I want to thank you one more time for your time today. It was a great chat, and thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you so much. It was great to join you.